Okay, now we're ready to get started. Well, first of all, welcome everybody to the ASAPM 2010 Dialogue Series. My name is Alex Brown, and I'll be sort of the technical host and for you guys here today. Before we get started, I'm going to run through some basic housekeeping issues so you know how you can interact with us in this online presentation space. First of all, if you can't hear my voice, you can dial in at the number at the bottom of the screen here. If you want to listen through your computer, you can do that as well. If for any reason the sound is not coming through your computer, adjust the sound on your computer, try logging out and logging in again. Those things seem to work. According to my view here, though, almost everybody is doing fine and has access to the audio. But again, if for any reason you'd like to, feel free to use the dial-in number. And if you have any problems, I probably won't be able to do technical support for you right here, but if you go to lotuslive.com/support, they are great. They will help you get set up, and you should be able to rejoin and get through any problems that you have. Okay, next thing I wanted to run through with everybody are the interactive features. If for any reason you want our attention or you have a question, there's a little raise your hand button in the upper left corner. And if somebody wouldn't mind just clicking on that to make sure that you're actually hearing me, that would be a wonderful favor to me. You can also click on the chat bubble off to the right and type in any questions that you like. I'll be acting as the voice of the audience. So most questions will have come in through a typed method, and then I'll voice those questions for the people who have asked them. If for any reason you do want to ask a question, you can also dial in live. Just use the raise your hand feature in order to get Tim's attention as he's going through this material. And that really covers the interactive features. We are going to have some brief polling. Oh, and thank you for raising your hand, those folks who have. I noticed that. And also this session is being recorded, including Q&A. So if you don't want to be part of the recording, don't ask questions. I know everybody here on the call is available afterwards via email and so forth. So if you have a question that you can't get to during the live meeting, feel free to get in touch with us afterwards. And there will be a recording probably made available a few days after the event. I'm just going to put this slide up really briefly in case anybody's still having audio problems. They can read this. And then we'll be ready to get started. Let me just switch over to our main slide deck and introduce our presenter. Tim Jaques has been an incredible volunteer for ASAPM. He has been great to work with in the stuff that I've done. Just last month we did a session about APRO where he went into a lot of his involvement there. Today we're going to be jumping into project success, and let me turn it over to you, Tim.
Great. Thank you so much, Alex. My name is Tim Jaques. I'm here today with Frank Salidis. We are very, very excited to present on perspectives on project success. I want to especially thank you, Alex, and we wanted to show this slide. Alex is our gold sponsor for this event. He provides us with the tool here and hosts it and takes time out of his day to do this. So thank you very much for that. If anyone is so interested, please go to alexsbrown.com to see the various webinar series that Alex puts on. They're all very, very high quality. Alex really knows what he's talking about, so please go visit his website. I want to introduce Frank Salidis. Frank, you want to say a few words about yourself?
Okay, just that I've been involved with ASAPM only for a brief time. I think I joined officially just a little bit over a year ago, and I've been very active with the Project Management Institute. I was a past president of the New York City chapter. I was president of that chapter for 10 years. And also I was a president of the PMI Assembly of Chapter Presidents, and most recently the chair of the Education and Training Specific Interest Group. And I decided to get more involved in ASAPM. I see there's a lot of activity going on there, and thought it was a great opportunity to join forces and see if I can help contribute to the continuing enhancement and improvement of the organization.
Great. Thank you, Frank. Frank and I will be walking you through these slides today. This is intended to be a dialogue. So we would encourage your questions, and as Alex indicated earlier, you can pose questions by raising your hand. Alex is going to help MC those questions while we sort of take you through some content here that hopefully will be of value to you. Just brief introduction for me, Tim Jaques. I am the CEO of a company called Line of Sight, project management and management consulting firm based out of Maryland and New York. I am also the Director of Standards for ASAPM, and am very, very happy to be part of this dialogue series. So let's begin. Let's dive into this and talk about project success. It's a compelling topic because we've all been probably, if you've been around projects long enough, you've been around some failures. And hopefully you've had a chance to touch a very successful project or two. What we start off with is this idea of what is success? What is project success at all? When we look at the dictionary, you know, we sort of looked at Merriam-Webster and wanted to understand what is success in a general sense, and that's the accomplishment of an aim or a purpose, the attainment of popularity or profit, a person or thing that achieves desired aims or attains prosperity. So in general, we can see that success is achieving desired aims. It's the attainment of profit or popularity, which could maybe also be stated as market share, and the accomplishment of a purpose or an aim. So these are interesting concepts when we think about them in terms of a project. Let's look now at the project view of success. And what we want to offer to you now is, as we begin to go through this, Frank and I are going to sort of offer up to you many different definitions here that are classic and unconventional in terms of project success. And so take a look. Here, the first concept that we would want to the first concept that we'd want to put forward is that success may be defined differently depending on the audience. So as you look at this model that was taken from Duncan Hoey, I think is how you pronounce his name, there's 4 levels here, right? There's bringing a project in on time, on budget, within scope. Then there's this idea of a maturity model. That is having predictable outcomes. Next level then, realizing benefits from the project. That is, actual business benefits are achieved through project success. And then finally, at the 4th level, is strategies are implemented and value is added at the corporate level. One key point here about project success is this idea that corporate success, achieving a strategy, does not have a lot to do with bringing a project in on time. That is, a project could be late, could be over budget, could be way off scope, but the strategy could still have been implemented as a result. So success may vary based on what seat you're sitting in. So let me offer up this, some wisdom of the ages. Yogi Berra, in theory, there is no difference between theory and practice. In practice, there is. So while it'll take you probably a few readings of that to get that fully wrapped around your brain, what we want to offer up to you is that there is a practice to project success. And what we'd like to do now is to sort of walk you through what some of those different practices are. So there are dimensions of project success. There's the classic triple constraint.
Scott Freoff.
Hi, Scott. There is customer satisfaction, increased capacity and efficiency, financial returns, new learning that can be achieved, project value, and of course, new business. These are all different aspects of the of project success. So what I'd like to do now is to invite Frank to share your thoughts on sort of what we just covered and to begin to look at some of these dimensions. Frank, any thoughts on this?
Well, the only thing that I would add to this in terms of dimensions of project success is that years ago, and I'll go back to my time and just starting with PMI just about a little over 20 years ago, that the triple constraint was basically the measure of project success, on time within budget according to specifications. Having done a lot of work with Dr. Harold Kersner and a bunch of other professionals and authors of books on project management, that I've come to learn that project success is much more than just a triple constraint. And the one item or thought that I subscribe to is that it is basically success is in the eye of the beholder. If you look at the triple constraint model of cost, schedule, and scope, we have in the past been led to believe through traditional project management that if your project is on scope, on schedule, and within budget, that you have project success. And we can find lots and lots of examples of projects that have come in late that have been actually perceived as successful by the customer or even over budget and still perceived as success. So I've done a lot of interviewing with project managers and asking them, what is their definition of success? And if I could share a real quick story, doing a project for the Orlando Public School System a few years ago, I was asked to become part of a requirements gathering effort, and I was told that the project that they had worked on previously was a success. And when I met with the project team, I was curious as to how they measured success, and I asked the question, how do you know your project was successful? And the response I got back from an individual almost instantly was, well, we're all still here. And, if you think about that, their first level of success was the fact that they were all still employed. They further said that the customer was using the product was another example of success. So it really depends on who you're speaking to and what level they're speaking from when we start to look into what success actually means.
Frank, let me interject here. I know Alex has gotten a few questions.
Actually, I haven't gotten any questions yet. I just wanted to turn off the chime so that we don't have people chiming in as we join in. So just hold on a second while I do that.
Okay.
Muted.
Thanks for pausing, everybody. So you can see on the slide here, what we would offer up is that the triple constraint really is a mixture of schedule, scope, and cost, and some folks include quality in the triple constraint, and that these are involve a compromise between and among those constraints, right? So project success is often the extent to which a team can successfully compromise its way through these three constraints.
Yeah, another way to look at that would be between schedule, cost, and scope, that you may compromise, but the key word that comes into play here a lot is the trade-offs required in order to achieve your objectives. So you're trading scope for cost or schedule for scope or something along those lines. So we are compromising. We're also trading off in order to achieve the goals that we're looking for. Now, this slide that we're bringing up here, this is an invitation for some comment, and the question for the people that are on the call here is how important is a triple constraint? And I know that there's talk out there of several different models out there. Is there a need for a new model? How do we go beyond this traditional triangle of these 3 points? And what is success when we look at business today? What's the definition of success in our business environment? and what should we be focusing on in trying to assure that we're going to be successful in the future. So it's at this particular point that we're kind of interested in getting a few comments on the views of success. And where do we go now? I mean, what's the beyond the triple constraint, beyond the triangle? What is the next step?
Ed Fern, I know that you had raised your hand. I'm not sure if you can speak or if you can write your question down in the chat area, and then we can get to that. And again, others, please feel free to either raise your hand or submit your comments in the chat area.
Okay, and while we're waiting for the questions to come in, if we go to the next slide. Okay, we're looking at customer satisfaction, and the underlying word there is desired deliverables. In past experiences that I've had, we've talked about something called ready, aim, and fire, and then basically we would have a plan in place, and we go off to what would be called the planned result. And sometimes the planned result is not actually what the customer really, really, truly wanted. And in today's environment, you see some people basically kind of approaching things from a ready, fire, aim approach, and then basically adjusting as they're going forward so that the desired result is actually attained. So, when you look at customer satisfaction, did they get what they really, truly desired as opposed to what was planned for? If the customers are willing to pay for the product or service, that would be an indication that they're satisfied and that they're happy with the service, that we can verify that the problem has been solved, that a good relationship has been established between the customer and other project stakeholders, and Tim and I discussed that last point, the customer learns to address analogous problems, basically meaning that what they learned and what they experienced in the delivery of the project was the ability to compare what they've learned with other issues that are out there, similar projects having problems, and actually apply that knowledge that they learned in the project in these other areas of business to make their business more effective and more sustainable in the long term.
Thanks.
Tim, anything you want to add to that?
Yeah, well, I'm looking at the chat area, and I see that Fran mentioned something. If everyone could take a look there, she says, I think that that success can be measured by customer satisfaction. PM should work with their project sponsors and ask what success would look like to them. Use that to measure success in addition to other traditional methods. That's great. That's exactly what this slide is getting to, is that customer satisfaction is indeed one of the hallmarks of a successful project, even almost to the exclusion of, did you actually meet the deliverables, perhaps? Sometimes you fall short on the deliverables, but your customer is still happy with that. Maybe that's considered a success.
Well, just one more item to add to that, and I was part of AT&T for 28 and a half years, and I was directly involved in customer service, and we were measured on customer satisfaction. And one of the things about customer satisfaction that's critical is that even if you're running into problems and there are delays, that if you practice good communication and keep your customers informed and show them basically that you're committed to get things solved, that will have a major, major impact on customer satisfaction, even if something doesn't come in exactly on time or 100% the way it was expected. The ability to work with the customer, keep the customer informed, and basically, empathize with the customer is a critical factor in customer satisfaction.
And Frank, we had a good comment come in also. Stakeholder is the ultimate definer of success. I think that's very much in line with what you're saying.
Absolutely.
And also, if the planned deliverables are not the desired deliverables, then you have a bad plan. That was another comment we got from the audience.
Well, that's an interesting comment. I don't know if anybody knows a person by the name of Paul Giamalvo, but he was involved in a LinkedIn discussion about something about that particular topic. If a project manager and team are given specifications and work through those specifications and the requirements given by the customer, and the project is brought in on time, within budget, and according to specifications, and then the customer says, I'm very unhappy with this, this is not what I want, basically who's to blame? So you can put in something exactly the way it was intended to be put in and planned, and the plan itself and the execution of the plan would be great, but if it's not what the customer was looking for, then you have a problem. And the question is, how did that occur? And that created quite a bit of a dialogue. So in my experience, the only thing I can say is that what you plan and what the customer desires is sometimes not exactly the same, and we have to continue to work through that to make sure that we do get the desired result.
Great, thanks. I also see that what Ed Fern has put up in the chat. I contend that I may lead a project that learns the scope is impossible or is too expensive or will take too long, and I will have been a successful PM. Thanks, Ed. That absolutely. That's another way to look at it. And actually, we're gonna get to that topic in just a bit. The idea of outcomes versus outputs. I just did a poll and asked folks to answer the question. I think the triple constraints is the best way to measure results. And I can see based on these results. That there is here, I'm going to share these results right now, that there is overwhelming vote for no. So
actually,
let me go back.
That's encouraging to me. I'm glad. I saw years ago people thought that triple constraint was the determinant of success. It's nice to see so many people saying no to that question.
Indeed, indeed. Let's keep going here and keep talking about the customer satisfaction theme here, and then maybe we can keep going.
Okay, now this particular slide here, the customer supplier model, years ago when I was at AT&T, we got involved in quality improvement projects, quality improvement teams, and generally, focused on a quality approach to things. And the customer supplier model emerged, and I kind of adapted that and modified that to the project management environment. In projects, what we deal is with process, okay, and through our processes we produce the results. And what it's saying here is that in a project, the customer is the next person in the process. And the idea behind this is that although we have an ultimate customer, it might be the paying customer, and we also have the end user or the stakeholder that is going to use the service as a customer, that we also should look at the customer that's internal in the project, who is the next person in the process. If you are a person on the project team and you are producing something, a deliverable, maybe it's a work package or something, and you are going to hand off that deliverable to someone else on the team, that person becomes a customer. So if you think of that person as the end user of the deliverable that you're producing, then there's some key things that should be taken into consideration. Number one is that there should be some expectations set between customer and supplier, okay? And these expectations should be set intentionally and upfront, and to avoid misunderstandings later on. When it comes to expectations, people should understand that what we say or don't say, or what we do or don't do, can actually set an expectation. So we need to take the time and effort to focus on setting clearly defined expectations and visit those expectations throughout the life of the project. Secondly, we should be defining clearly what the deliverable is. What exactly are you producing, so that both customer and supplier are in agreement on what that is. And then another thing that should actually occur, and actually before you begin the actual implementation of building or developing this product or deliverable, is to establish acceptance criteria. What exactly will it take for you as the customer to accept this? And we need to have this information up front before we actually begin to build, so that we're not producing something and handing it to a customer who in turn says, well, that's not what I asked for. So these three steps here, internally and also at the end of the project, would make a big difference in terms of the quality of the deliverable, the functionality of the deliverable, and whether or not we're going to achieve success. So a key point here, at least the way I see it, is you should really know what the customer wants, make sure that you truly understand it before you go build it.
Great.
Frank, there's an interesting comment came up from Fran. They said that in their organization they survey several different groups of internal customers, project managers, business analysts, from the PMO, from the overall project perspective. I think when you're doing this customer supplier model, there's even some question as to who is your customer.
Right, you have to define who your customer is, and if you look into any of the literature on doing a needs analysis, one of the things that there are a couple of things that you do up front. One is that in any organization, part of that process is to define what it is you actually deliver. Okay, what products or services do you actually deliver? Secondly, you have to ask the question of those deliverables or products or services, who uses them? Okay, and that helps you create an understanding of who actually the customers are. And it takes a bit of time to do, but it's very worthwhile because then you get to see exactly what it is that you do produce at very different levels and who the real customers are and what they're looking for.
There's a great saying out there, buyers are liars. And I think that I have found that to be true in some cases, that customers don't know what they want. Sometimes they think they know what they want. Sometimes they're upfront and tell you that they're not sure. But a lot of times, finding out what their wants are versus what their needs are is kind of is part of setting those expectations up front. Let me keep going here and push forward kind of to what we would offer up as another dimension of project success, and keep those comments coming. We'll keep addressing them. The next sort of dimension would be increased capacity and efficiency. So we've talked about sort of the triple constraint as a classic notion of success. We've talked about customer satisfaction. Let's look at a few more. Increased capacity and efficiency. So here's a study that was conducted by Letts, Ryan, and Grossman about 12 years ago, and they suggested that the overall outcomes of capacity building include helping the organization to do what it already does but better, improving its ability to grow, and improving its ability to change. And so if a project results in any one of these three things, that is doing what it does better, or improving its ability to grow or to adapt to new circumstances, then that project will most likely have been a success. So let me, along those lines, we're sort of leading up to a more maybe the financial portion of what is success. So along those lines, here's a great quote from Vince Lombardi. Right? What presentation isn't complete without a Vince Lombardi quote? If you're not keeping score, it's just practice. And indeed, in projects, it's critically important that we keep score because people want to know, what did we get for our investment? With that said, let me turn this back over to you, Frank, and we'll talk a little bit more about the financial aspects of project success.
Well, when you look at project success, a lot of people think it really is pretty much based on how much money did we make, how much money did we save, things like that. So when we look at financial measures, we take a look at the return on the investment. What did we get back from the effort that we put into it? Okay, so success can be looked at not only did we achieve what the customer wants, but from the side of the view of the supplier is did we actually get the return that we were looking for when we invested in it. So there's several different ways to look at it that way. Of these financial measures, we can take a look at things from internal rate of return. Basically how well is that dollar working in terms of our investment, or net present value. How much money did we actually make? So these financial measures can help us determine whether or not we achieved success. But when you take a look at that other bullet item down there, criteria for financial measures, and we take a look at tangible benefits. Well, the return on investment, internal rate of return, net present value, payback period, break-even analysis, whatever what you want to use there, they are talking about the tangible benefits. And if you ask most people what is a tangible benefit on a project, they're going to talk about money, profitability, or something like that. What we're also interested in, and this is a measure of success, would be the what we call intangible benefits associated with a project that we work on. And you have your tangible cash flow and payback period and so on and money, but the intangibles are also things that we need to take a look at when it comes to satisfaction and also whether or not the project itself was successful. Are your stakeholders happy? Do you know who all your stakeholders are? Have you taken the time to find out exactly what they want and what their view of success was? If your project, you perceive your project to be successful, and yet your entire project team does not want to work with you ever again on a project, would you call that successful? Brand loyalty. If you're delivering a product or service to a customer and they truly, truly appreciate the work you do and they like the product, you know that you're gaining brand loyalty and success. And then these are things that are not necessarily measurable. Reputation, goodwill, image, employee morale, areas that we need to take into consideration that are all factors that hover about, might encircle success, but that sometimes we don't actually think about that.
Great.
And Frank, one of the things that's come up in a couple of comments is the difference between project scope and product scope. So it looks like you're talking about a mix here. Some of these things may be the result of the product that we create as a result of the project, whereas others are more direct results of the project.
Well, I think that I saw that comment on project scope and product scope, and I think that there might be a couple of different views on what that means exactly. My understanding of project scope is associated with the effort required to produce the product, and the product scope focuses on what the product is in terms of its physical characteristics, its features and functions. So those two elements of scope are certainly integrated and interrelated. We should know what the product is in terms of its features, functions, what will it do for the customer and help the customer meet their objectives. And then the project scope is pretty much how are we going to pull together the resources and things that we need to actually produce that product. So I understand the difference between the two, but I kind of look at them as very, very closely interrelated, and we have to kind of manage them together.
That's
Great.
very true.
Okay, very good. Let's keep going. Let's talk about ROI.
Well, it says right on the top, ROI is easy, right? Well, I'd be interested in some comments on that one. Return on investment is basically a measurement of what you're getting for what you're investing. And I think that the more difficult part in ROI is basically, are you working on the right project? And I'll interject something in here. A friend of mine who wrote a book entitled The Business Savvy Project Manager has a quote in his book that says, it really doesn't matter if your project met its objectives if it's the wrong project. So, when we think of return on investment, we got to go a little bit beyond the money piece there and make sure that we've put enough thought into, is this the right project that we should be working on, and are we going to get the kind of gains in terms of finances that we would want to receive, that we would expect. So if you look at things like opportunity and cost of money and cost of capital, those things will create a few issues of concern in what I'll call the selection process of a project. But if you're not spending the right kind of time asking the right questions to make sure that you're working on the right project, then ROI is probably not going to be the major factor that you should be thinking about.
Great. Thanks. So as this slide is indicating, and I think I saw a comment from Scott Freoff, ROI formula is easy. Values to put in the formula are another matter. And I think one of the things that I know I've seen over the years is that one thing that's key for ROI is getting agreement up front as to how that formula will be demonstrated and what are the factors that go into it. Because lacking that agreement, there's so many factors that one could look at to determine a return on an investment. It really is very complicated. Well, let's keep going here. Let's look at a different model, a different dimension of success here. So this is one that we sort of have talked about as the learning model, and this one actually came out of the ASAPM effort called the A-Pro, which we talked about last month. This I would offer up as something maybe akin to a learning model. That is it a success? Is a project a success if the organization learns from it? And this gets to Ed Fern's comments earlier. So if you think about a project or multiple projects as having things going into it, strategic decisions that feed the selection and the resources and the PM practices that make the projects happen. And then out of that comes an output, right? So a database, let's say. A database is the output of a project. But really the intended outcome was that they have subscribers to that database and that database generates revenue. So the idea is, well, you know, at all of these levels, at all of these points, you have lessons that come out of these, right? Did we build the right database? Does it actually meet the needs of the marketplace and of our internal and external customers? And is it actually generating the outcomes that we want? Right, and so the question is if an organization is able to learn from this, is it able to recognize its mistakes and therefore be better for it? Would that project have been a success? To Ed Fern's point earlier, that if you recognize that the scope of a project is too big or too expensive or will take too long, that very well could be a success, to have not made the rest of the investment, but to have cut that investment off. So I see some comments coming in here. Let me read some. Lars wrote, avoidance of collateral damage, whether with cost impact or not. Safety is part of the process, is not intangible when you're performing construction or similar projects. That's a great point. Safety, safety is not an intangible.
It's interesting, too, that safety can come in at so many levels. You could have a project that improves safety and therefore has a direct return on investment because of lost work days and issues like that. And also in a learning model, if you improve your safety as part of the project, that can be a side benefit of a project whose main purpose was not safety avoidance. It was not accident avoidance.
Great. So I think this is, to me, this is perhaps one of the more interesting sort of slices of project success, because I think so many organizations fail to realize their own lessons from the projects that they do. Many projects are actually, they aren't the home run hit. Maybe they score a double. They're a partial success. But what would really have saved it would have been learning something about why it wasn't a home run and figuring out how to do it next. One organization I know that is really good at this particular model is NASA, where they have a very vigorous approach to evaluating lessons learned, understanding what happens and what happened on a project, and then how to look back on it.
Actually, there's another thing that just came in from Devin. The cost of investment we can calculate, but what period do we get the return in? It's always a good thing to keep in mind with return on investment, the time value of money. The longer it takes you to get that return, the less it's worth in real dollars.
Right. Thank you, Devin. So along those lines then, sort of some of the using that word collateral, some of what we can get from a project also that leads to success is enhancing the intelligence, right? Are we getting smarter? Along the lines of project management, program, and portfolio management, these are practices that are now being extended across the organization. And so what one project learns those lessons really need to feed into other programs and projects across the organization and be a part of the project selection process, the resource management process, customer relationship, et cetera, go, no-go decisions. And frequently, I don't know about folks in the audience, but I think that many organizations that are just beginning to tangle with sort of enterprise project management really struggle with this idea of how do we move the knowledge across the organization and get it to the right people at the right time. I do see Bob suggested a comment. So does learning models say that a bad project is successful since you know not to do it again? Could be a costly lesson. Indeed, it is. And Ed, let's see, George suggested learning model seems to be a trend, and learning model dictates to the learning early, quickly, and cheaply. So indeed, I think that these are some good comments about the learning model, that organizations need to be able to move quickly to recognize lessons and to get to that point quickly so that you can apply those lessons to the next set of projects. Let me keep going here. As we talk about success, which is a lot of fun, I think we also want to look at failure. How is failure determined? What are the major factors that contribute to a project going bad? So let's take a look at, and is project failure always bad? Let's take a quick look now at an example. And this, of course, for many of you, I'm sure that there are people out there in this audience who know a heck of a lot more about this project than either Frank or me. But what we want to do is to sort of invite some discussion about this. This is the classic example of a project failure / project success. Take a look at this slide. This is what happened to get a simplistic view of what happened to get the Sydney the Sydney Opera House built. So in 1957, January, 200 plans were submitted, and one plan was selected. Phase 1 construction began in March 1959. By February 1963, a mere, almost 4 years later, it was 2 years behind schedule. And they only had the podium section of the building complete. By March 1966, there was a major funding shortfall, and there were leadership changes. Phase 2 was completed in 1967, the exterior shells. The installation of the last pre-cast shell segment occurred at that point. In 1973, Phase 3 was completed, which was the main concert halls and the interior. Major scope change. At the last minute, they changed the type of the main music hall was supposed to be multi-purpose. That is, it was supposed to be configurable to different types of music, symphonic music, operatic music, etc. And they changed that and made it a single-purpose main hall. And then the first major concert that was given was in 1973. So here's this is all taken directly from the Sydney Opera House website. So this is sort of, an interesting view. Let's take a look now at kind of what the outputs looked like. The outputs really spelled failure, right? The original cost was estimated at $7.
Did we lose you, Tim?
Sounds like Tim just dropped off there.
Yeah, Tim. Do we still have Tim on the line?
Hopefully he'll call back in again. Anyway, while we're waiting for him, if you take a look at some of these figures, original cost $7 million, final cost $100 million. Just if we look at the first two bullet items, I would think a lot of people would look at that project as a major failure. Tim and I were also we were talking about this issue of changing of leadership, and brought up a little bit about the big dig up in Boston, which had some similarities in terms of what was going on in change of leadership. And it's my understanding that during that particular project, which was, I think, more significantly over budget than this one, they changed project managers on that at least 10 times. And I think that the jury is still out as to whether or not that was a successful project. They're still running into some problems there. So a lot of lessons learned there. You had lots of leadership changes throughout this project. You had major scope changes, lots of funding shortfalls, and you had very, very unhappy groups of stakeholders, from politicians to users or potential users to just about anyone. So, I mean, if you really look at all of this, it just really spelled total failure. And that was a serious situation that we had to that they had to deal with. So anyway, I don't have a way to move to the next slide here, Alex. I don't know if you do, but we may have to wait for Tim to get back online.
Yeah, just give me a second. I'll get that taken care of. I'll take control back from Tim. And actually, while we're waiting, I'll tell you, I've visited over at the Sydney Opera House, and a lot of the people over there say that original cost figure of $70 million, that was just a made-up number. That was just a really horrible estimate. Somebody came up with that because they thought that's what they had to say in order to get the project approved. So whether Sydney Opera House is failure or fraud, I guess, is debatable.
Okay, well, that's kind of interesting. I didn't know that part.
Yeah, that's the story that I heard from some of my friends in Australia.
Okay, now this slide that's up here, I borrowed this from Dr. Harold Kersner and myself. Published a book called Value-Driven Project Management, and the Sydney Opera House was mentioned in that book in connection with trying to perceive value as a good example. And if you take a look at this chart here, Tim put that quote together about the Opera House. It stands by itself as one of the indisputable masterpieces of human creativity, not only in the 20th century, but in the history of humankind. And just a slide before that, we were talking about what a failure this thing was. So that's kind of interesting. But the little chart there talks about stakeholder view and views of success. Organizational, apparently this was a failure when it was finally put together. But 5 years later, they perceived this thing to be just an unbelievable success. It was very good for the country. Became an icon. People are very proud of it. So it basically proved itself over time and was perceived to have value, but not on opening day. You have a product or in a market that eventually people basically saw a success. From a capital market perspective, it certainly was a failure, but looking downstream, that we actually saw value in this. And one of the points that was being made in the book, and Kersner talks about this a lot, is that in many cases, the projects that we work on are not going to produce that value simply at the end of the project, that we're looking for basically the short-term success and value, but much more the longer-term value, and sometimes it requires that forward-looking and forward-thinking in order for us to understand what true value is.
Hey, it's Tim. I'm back on. Sorry for the drop-off there. So I see a comment from Ed Byrne. Infrastructure plan for the 2014 Winter Olympic Games in, I'm not going to get it right, Sochi, Russia, has already had 3 changes of the senior management team. The Olympics is always a good study because there's forever massive failures or successes that go on there. Very public venue for project management that occurs. But I think that one of the points that we wanted to bring up here was this idea of outputs versus outcomes. The Sydney Opera House generates hundreds of millions of dollars every year in revenue, both in and of itself and in drawing people to the city. So it's interesting. The pain that it took to get there is far outweighed by the gains that they've seen there. I see another comment from Scott Freoff. I do not see failure of project management per se. I see a project that perhaps was not planned as well as it might have been, and as such had to manage via the application of good change management. Thoughts on that?
Let me make a quick comment on that. I was reading that, and we would probably debate a little bit about whether it was project management failure or a bad plan or maybe not a good change process, but Tom Peters said something that I use a lot when I'm speaking about projects, and his comment or his quote is that there is no such thing as a poor project. There is only poor execution. So we have to really think hard about that. If we're not executing properly, if we're not executing processes properly, we're going to see some problems. So I kind of subscribe to his thought that, if we are in poor execution, that's where the real situation is. But the project itself is something that we really need to work at, and we have to execute properly. So I think that we probably have some debate about project failure being associated with project management or not having a proper change control plan, because as I see it, project management, the approach to project management, an effective approach would include an effective monitoring and control procedure that's agreed upon by everyone.
Great. Thank you. So next slide, we're sort of coming into the home stretch here, folks. We wanted to offer up, of course, the wisdom of Warren Buffett here. Price is what you pay. Value is what you get. And so along those lines, we wanted to talk about, that in terms of project success, how projects can often improve the competitive position. Frank, you want to talk a little bit to this?
Well, as far as improving competitive position, it's my firm belief that if you have a strong, well-practiced methodology that is supported by management, that is subscribed to by the employees of an organization, that you have people that have good commitment, then you're going to be in a competitive position. So when you think about being competitive, project management basically provides an organization with a method or a possible way of being competitive. Okay, it talks about project management as a differentiator for many companies. There are companies who are excellent project implementers, and there are other companies that are in a big hurry, and you subscribe to a process known as go early and go ugly. And I think that use of a discipline is going to be a major differentiator between those types of companies. The IT firms demonstrating effective project management practice to prospective customers. There's lots and lots of competition out there for IT, and there's lots of things that are going on inside companies to support their own internal organizations in terms of keeping the company running. And if we have a good disciplined practice, and if we have the right people executing things effectively, that we are going to see that. You'll see that demonstrated through efficiencies, through cost reduction, through improved practices, and we can perceive the customers will perceive a more effective organization. So if you look at the bottom, success is often defined by the referral process. If you are truly being successful in the delivery of your products and services and you are getting referrals, that would be an indication of true effectiveness and certainly would improve your competitive position.
Great. Thanks. So this is another sort of dimension of project success we would put out there. In sort of wrapping this up, what we'd want to suggest is that a project manager and a project team really needs to orient themselves towards success. And in doing that, it's not just a matter of identifying the proper scope and identifying the proper schedule. Those are all important things to do. But it's really about defining success early in the project from multiple dimensions. Looking at project constraints as a way to identify opportunities for success. That is, if an organization is really constrained on their budget, if they want to do the project on a shoestring, that may be one of the areas where they think that the project will be a success if it comes in on or under budget. Success criteria should be explicit, and it should be easy to understand. Project success should address multiple dimensions. It should talk about customer satisfaction. It should talk about the triple constraints, right? It should talk about, that it should result in referrals back and more business for your organization. These kinds of key factors will help to round out the picture of what sort of value this project brings. And then finally, as we all know, projects change over time. So as those changes occur, formal scope changes should be incorporated into the success measures, and so those should be redefined as a result. Let me ask any folks out there, any thoughts on other observations on sort of what it means to orient yourself to a successful project?
It's interesting. From being in the insurance industry, work safety is something that people usually take for granted, but then they get in trouble if they take that for granted. So issues of safety and liability probably need to be considered in success too.
Tim, let me just offer one more thing here before we close out. I spend a lot of time talking to Dr. Kersner and worked with him on 3 books and so on, and I've even helped out a little bit on his textbook. In the very beginning of his book, he talks about 16 points to project management maturity, and I'm just going to read like the first 2 or 3. The first one, which certainly would orient us towards success, would be, it says, number 1, it says adopt a project management methodology and use it consistently. Number 2, implement a philosophy that drives the company toward project management maturity and communicate it to everyone. And 3, commit to developing effective plans at the beginning of each project. So those are just 3 of the 16 points. And, we have to start to think about, how do we do that in any organization so that we are on that continuous track towards improvement and that, of course, as they say, quality itself is not a destination, it's a journey, and I think success is a journey also. How do we get to do it better all the time?
Great. I like that. Success indeed is a journey. Let me offer up another quotable quote here from Tom Peters, that as of this second, quit doing less than excellent work. I think if you find yourself on this webinar right now, clearly you're somebody who is concerned about project management, about project success. I would offer up that this is really a call to action for everybody to look at their projects and to begin to think about how can we improve this, improve our projects, improve our relationships with our customers and with our key stakeholders, and get them to really consider what it takes to be a success. So with that in mind, let me offer up a couple of sort of closing thoughts here. First of all, I want to thank Ed Fern in particular. Ed brought this idea up a long time ago to ASAPM. Gosh, I think it's over a year now. And it took a while to get this, indeed, the whole dialogue series off the ground and to incorporate the idea of project success into it. So, Ed, thank you very much for bringing this up, and I hope that we've been responsive to that. The other point I want to make here is that we want to invite everybody to continue the dialogue at the ASAPM website. We're going to send out a follow-up email with a link, and we would invite your comments on project success. It's a good venue to keep talking about it. There's clearly from the comments that we've had so far, there's just a ton of wisdom out there on these various dimensions and what they mean to people and your experience. So please keep going. Yes, you will be able to get a copy of the PowerPoint. Yeah, go ahead.
I just wanted to note, too, that one of the privileges of ASAPM membership is access to the members-only discussion space, which I think is a very appropriate place to continue this. So if anybody has questions, join ASAPM, for goodness sake. It's a great organization, and we can continue this discussion there.
Fantastic. Thank you so much. It's just a little bit after the hour. Be sure to tune in on August 5th, 2010 at 3 p.m., where ASAPM President Stacy Goff will be talking for the next 2010 Dialogue Series. So put that on your calendar now, and you can email us at dialogue@asapm.org. Many thanks to Rose Johnston for this as well. Thank you so much for being the face of ASAPM for everybody. And I wish everybody a great day. Thank you so much. And again, go visit alexsbrown.com.
Thanks so much, Tim. Everybody have a great day. And if anybody has any questions, I guess you can stay on for a little bit, but we're going to stop the recording here. So if anybody has any last-minute questions, we can stay on. I know I'm still here. I think Tim's still on. I don't know if Frank's still here.
I'm still here.
All right, great. So you just had a comment from Scott. Generally speaking, organizations don't seek excellence, or they have the courage to execute to that standard. Ouch. Mediocrity is the standard more often than not. I hope that's not the case. But I think, Frank, I know we've had conversations at different spots. That's certainly a problem that you see in many organizations. People aim for mediocrity instead of excellence.
Well, the book From Good to Great sort of addresses that.
Yep.
The enemy of great being good. So, my comment, I'm about to make a note here and send it off. Are you able to see my comments? I'm not sure if they're actually going through.
I don't see it. You can send to all. It depends on who you have the send to comment there.
I'm not sure how to send it to all. I think they're all going to Stacy. Wait a minute.
Okay.
I think I just found out how to do that.
Hit the drop tab.
Oh, there you go. Okay, I've got it. What I was going to say, the idea is to develop a reputation for doing excellent work. And yep. I use that quote in some of my training programs also. Would you rather be known for doing excellent work or just okay work? And, I don't know too many people that are going to jump up and say, yeah, I just want to do okay work. And it's the excellent workers that are set apart from those who just do mediocre work. But you have to work at it. What Tom Peters says in his book, he says, quit doing less than excellent work, but then the other part of that is then work like hell to continue to do that. So it's not easy, but it's something that we should really encourage anyone, any employee, anyone that's on a project team. Why would you intentionally not do excellent work? I mean, if you have that attitude, we're going to run into trouble with our any particular product that we put on, and we see that. The United States went through that in a big way in the 70s and 80s, and we never really recovered from that because the attitude was, we're pretty good as it is. We don't have to make any changes. And the world basically, especially Japan and Germany and these other countries basically kind of took over, and they do the excellent work. So, there's some real lessons learned there.
There really is. One of the thoughts that's kind of coming up for me here is this idea that excellence is expensive, that it costs a lot. And what I would offer up is, which I'll sort of publish right now out to everybody, is this idea that mediocrity is actually very expensive. There's a lot of rework that's involved in mediocrity. There's a lot of rethinking that has to go on when you have to do something more than once. I like what Rose just said, a conundrum, doing your best work to deliver a good enough product. Some customers want Volkswagens, right? So in other words, sometimes good enough is good enough.
Well, that's a management decision.
Indeed it is.
I mean, management makes the decisions if you're going to have a Six Sigma type of operation or a Four Sigma. So, whatever management decides, the employees, the workers, the project managers are going to have to achieve that particular set of objectives and strategies. So, I understand money is a factor, and, you have to determine just what good enough really is. But I think that what differentiates one company from another is those companies that can take, a product that's good enough and have it to be perceived by their customers as completely excellent.
All right. Well, it sounds like we're getting to the end of the questions now. I think we should probably just wrap this up, and I look forward to seeing you all on the ASAPM members-only area. I know I get a lot of fun out of discussing things there.
Thank you so much, Alex. Thanks,
Yeah.
Scott. Nice comments to everyone. We really appreciate the dialogue.
Yeah, this is great. I love having so much comment going back and forth among the presenters and among the audience. This is a lot of fun today.
See, this is what they call, instead of presentation, it's called conversation.
Yeah. Yeah, it turned out very well. And my apologies in the beginning. We did have a little bit of sound issues. We'll have that better. We'll be even better the next time. How's that?
Excellent. Excellent.
All right, great.
Okay, and Rose was kind of instrumental in things. I haven't met or even spoken to Rose in any way, but Rose, thank you. And Tim, thanks for getting this organized, and Alex for helping us out with this. And I'm looking forward to doing more of these in the future.
Great.
No
Thanks.
problem.
Okay, now, take care.
Thanks.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye, everybody.